You have one precious life. How will you make your money work for you? It's time for Sage Money Conversations, where your financial happiness and confidence are always the subject. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Barbara Norman.
Well, good morning. My name is Barbara Norman. I am your host of Sage Money Conversations. And today we have Linda Jahnke with us, and we're going to talk about the long-term care dilemma. I have to say, this is an insurance that I just really don't like a whole bunch, but also one that we need. And so I met Linda, actually. She was helping folks get long-term care policies paid for, which is kind of crazy, but the first word I think out of the insurance company's mouth when a long-term care claim comes through is no, which I think is criminal. And so here I ran into Linda. Linda, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into long-term care.
Thank you, Barbara. So I have been in the long-term care insurance market since 1987. Right out of college, I started working at a nursing facility, and I was recruited by Aetna Insurance Company. And at that time, my grandfather was in a nursing home. My aunt was in a nursing home. And I thought, insurance pays for nursing home insurance? I've never heard of that before. So sure, let's try it. I was starting a family. My husband and I were starting a family. And so it actually took off. I would be considered, literally, people call folks like me a dinosaur in this industry. I've been in it since the beginning. And so I have seen everything come and go. I've dealt with all the rate increases, and I concur with your sensibility about, I have a love-hate relationship with insurance companies myself. I have a long-term care insurance policy, but I have lots of stories about the problems, but I also have wonderful stories about how they do pay off, which I know we're going to talk about. But I changed my practice around 2013 because of a sort of a tragic situation that happened with my client. And I know we're going to speak about that. But since 2013, I have operated in the space. I am a patient advocate. And so now what we do is we file claims for our clients and other people that are not my clients. We help them manage their care. We help them find good care resources, and we make sure they get their money.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like 2013, something touched your heart. What happened?
Yeah, so I had a gathering for my clients. Sometimes I would just have little wine and cheese things where I would invite our clients and give them a little update on what was going on in the industry. And my client, who was a school teacher, this woman was always impeccably dressed, and she was just such a sharp woman. And when she came to my program, she was wearing slippers. She was using a walker. She had a woman that was with her that was almost as old as she was. And my client had stains on her beautiful shirt.
Oh, dear.
And so after the program, I just went up to her and I said, how are you doing? What's going on? Who is this person who's with you? And she said, I think I need to file a claim. And I said, well, let me come on down to your house. And at that time, Barbara, and even now, insurance companies would prefer brokers not be involved in this process because it is a complicated process. And I think from legal purposes, they just don't want agents to get involved in this type of thing.
So the people that sold the policy are now to stay out of the picture.
Correct.
Wow.
In fact, I'll go on and tell you why that's the case. I went to her house with just the application for the claim. And mind you, it's 16 pages long. And so I went to her house and I saw the situation in her home. My client was in the process of waiting for an approval to get a morphine pump inserted into her back because she had such severe spinal stenosis. She was incontinent. And the reason I'm sharing these details with you is because it's important to the story. She was incontinent. She was in excruciating pain. She was on heavy-duty narcotic medication. She was not able to walk by herself. She wasn't able to shower by herself, and she couldn't bend over to put her shoes on, which is why she was wearing slippers. So when I saw that, I told her, I said, you absolutely, according to the terms of the policy, are eligible. Let me help you get this going. I filled it out. I put it through. I faxed it to the insurance company. And I just told her, I said, the one thing that I would like to do is I'd like to get you a caregiver because I don't know that this person who's helping you is appropriate. And she really dug her heels in. She was almost too insistent on me not doing anything with regard to bringing people in. Mind you, Barbara, I've been in San Diego for over 30 years. I've been an ombudsman for 7 years. I've been on the Glenner board, Alzheimer's Glenner, for 7 years. I know this community inside and out, and I know where to get good caregivers for my clients. And she was insistent, do not do that. As her insurance agent, I was concerned and I thought, okay, what can I say? I'm just her insurance agent, fine.
Can I ask, why didn't she want you to look for somebody else? Did she have an affinity for this woman? What was going on?
It's typical sometimes in people that are aging. It was a privacy issue with her. As I said before, she was an impeccably dressed, wonderfully professional woman. And I think that she felt super insecure and somewhat shamed by the condition that she was in. And she had this friend who she just wanted to help her. So I went on my way. I did not feel good about the situation. So fast forward about 3 months. I did not hear anything from her. I did not follow up with her. I, went about doing my regular job, and her family called me and told me what had happened to her the previous night. The caregiver was assisting her, attempting to get her into the bathroom. They both fell on the floor.
Oh, no.
And my client crawled into her closet bathroom area and she took her life.
Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah. And so,
wow.
My immediate thought was I felt horrific guilt because I knew that this person was not a good caregiver for her. And then on top of it, because of the medication she was taking and her depression, it was a perfect storm. And so the family shared this information. And I mean, if that wasn't a shock enough, then they said that piece of garbage policy you sold her has not paid. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. They didn't pay? Wait, okay. So what's the story there?
So what happened, I called the insurance company and I explained the situation. And they basically told me that because once a claim is opened, that unless I'm HIPAA authorized, even though I'm the broker, they cannot reach out to me. And they were not able to get the information from her they needed. There were forms they sent her to sign. The caregiver was supposed to call and answer questions, never did it. Totally fell through the cracks. But guess what? She was eligible. So they ended up paying the claim. They paid her estate. Like, who cares, right?
She needed it, while she was alive.
So after that situation, I literally was haunted, and it took me some time to work through just the horrible feelings I had about that. And I decided to become a patient advocate.
I love this.
Yeah. And I decided to do that because as a patient advocate, if I come into a situation that I believe is unsafe, I am a mandated reporter and I can do something about that. So I can bring help in. And also, as a patient advocate, when I'm helping people with their claim, I'm not their insurance agent. I stand in their shoes. I talk to the company, whatever company they have, and I advocate for them. So whatever's going on with them, their care. So if our clients are having a problem with their caregivers, we get involved in that because I'm their advocate. If a claim goes through a rough spot or something happens, we take care of it. We get medical records, whatever it takes. So we are on the medical side of the claim issue now for our clients. And that's why I started doing this. And right now we have 165 families that we're managing their claims.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, and you kind of have touched on an owie because I'm not in an insurance anymore. I gave up my license, but I had it for a long time. And my big beef with, and it's not just long-term care policies, it could also be annuities and disability policies, but these are policies that were sold 20, 30 years ago. And when you get on the phone and you try to make a claim, there have been so many iterations of policy. I think the person on the phone, without having the policy in front of them, doesn't know what that thing says. And so let's just start there. There's so many different issues of policies. Who knows what one says from the next to the next to the next. So how complex is that? My other complaint with long-term care, and I hear it on the financial planning side so much, is I've paid into this policy for 20 years and all of a sudden I got this notice, they're doubling my premiums or I have to half my benefit and they're frosted. It's like, I'm in my 80s and here we go, right when I'm about to need this thing, they almost take it away. And so here we have difficulties with the premiums and the policies. We have difficulties getting things paid. Linda, talk to me about that, because this is such a frustrating industry.
I know. I tell my clients a lot of times I feel somewhat schizophrenic because insurance is a great concept if it works, but let's be honest, it's business. It's an industry. And what I had shared with you in the past, and this is what I see my primary role is, that my job is to bring order into a chaotic and difficult situation. My focus is to restore to people what they are owed and what they deserve. So I'm going to address the two things. The first thing you talked about was the difficulty with claims, policies. The second thing is rate increases. And I do want to get to that because it's very important. So I am in a unique situation. If I were not on the claims side of long-term care insurance, I don't know that I would keep my policy. I've had a policy for 20 years and I had a 95% rate increase last year. But I want to put that in context.
Okay.
I have a policy that is unlimited, that will pay me $10,000 a month. I have a compounded inflation rider at 5%, and my premium was $100 a month.
Oh, wow.
And so when I got a 95% rate increase, to be honest with you, I was waiting for it because I knew there's no way this company can afford that type of a exposure without charging.
Sure.
So, however, a lot of these carriers, and one of the things that I'm so happy to see, one of the companies that does the rate increase as well, I'll just name it, is Unum. They issue a rate increase and then they send a letter and they say, would you like to decrease the inflation rider? So they asked me, would you like to take your 5% down to 3%? And if you do, your premium's actually going to go down. If you want to do that, sign the letter. So most of my clients that get this information, most of my clients are in their 80s. They don't need an inflation rider anymore. Yeah. And so there's lots of things that we can mitigate that premium increase. And for the most part, my clients have all agreed with that strategy and they're super happy. Yay, fine. I kept my inflation rider because I'm young. Now, the rate increase are not the biggest concern for me. The biggest concern for me is that consumers with long-term care insurance do not know what they have. They do not know how to use it. They do not know how to talk to the insurance company. Okay, so remember, you buy a policy, you're supposed to know what's in it. To your point, you call the insurance company and now you're 85 years old and they say, oh, go online. Just go online. No.
Wow.
Download our app. And so let's pretend we're able to get through to the insurance company. You're absolutely right. So P.S., the claims process is typically handled by a third-party administrator. It's not handled by your company XYZ.
Oh, no kidding.
Absolutely. So you're going to talk to the insurance company about your policy specifics, but you're going to deal with a whole different entity for the claim. And unfortunately, yes, you're correct that sometimes customer service folks don't know the iteration of your policy. California has very specific laws. California's policies are totally different. So when we advise a person, we always want to see their contract. We look at the contract, we know the language so that when we get on the phone with the insurance company, if they're making an error, we can point that out to them. Unfortunately, a person who buys long-term care insurance, and Barbara, this is the thing that is so hard to explain about this, but think about it. If you're 65 and you're on Medicare or you're in a Medicare Advantage plan, you go to the doctor's office, you don't even have any idea who's dealing with the claims, who's sending that bill to Medicare, who's sending whatever.
Yeah, you're right. We don't know.
You don't see. Long-term care insurance pays the client. They pay the client. So guess what? The client's responsible for all of that mess. And it is a process that people don't do. So it's a new process. So what we do is we try and explain to our clients, look, this is the formula. We will help you with the formula. But I have to say, on top of the insurance company being difficult to deal with, our clients sometimes shoot themselves in the foot. And I can give you examples if you'd like.
Yeah, how so? Like, how would anybody shoot themselves in the foot? It's like, I bought this insurance, care is expensive. get it paid?
Well, a lot of times people don't want to be transparent and they're not very good historians with what their health issues are.
Oh,
Right. And so, when elderly people sometimes go to the doctor, they're not necessarily transparent that they're incontinent of bowel and bladder because that's super personal.
yeah.
In addition, depending on if they've got family members that are pressuring them to make changes, they certainly don't want people butting into their business. And so they're not going to share with their doctor, I fell when I got out of the shower yesterday, or I normally don't get dressed. I'm dressed today because I'm coming to see you. I'm not outside walking anymore because I'm afraid I'm going to fall. And by the way, I did fall. So I'll give you a perfect example of shooting yourself in the foot and not realizing it. I have a client who has been in an assisted living facility for 3 years. Her claim has been open. She's receiving about $8,000 a month after month. Every year, we have to do what's called a recertification. Every insurance company does this. They call the client up. They ask them questions. This particular time, which just happened this week, the insurance company called my client and asked her, "Are you getting showering?" "Yes." "Are you still getting help with dressing?" Mind you, my client is in a wheelchair. She's
Okay.
not even ambulatory. And she said no. They said, "Oh, are you still incontinent?" Sometimes I'm taking care of that myself." Went down the whole list. Denied. And I was completely shocked by that. And I called my client and I said, "Why did you say this?" And she said, "Because it's true." I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I don't want anybody in my room because of COVID." She said, "I'm scared to death. I'm going to get COVID." The claim closed.
They shut her down?
Yes, they did.
Oh, no.
And because she said she's not getting care. And guess what? The facility isn't giving her care. They're honoring her request to leave her alone. So as a patient advocate, my first concern is this is wrong. You're paying $8,000 a month. They better be in that room and doing what they're charging you for. I don't care. COVID is a thing. It's going to be around for a long time. We've got to get this fixed. So I'm going to have to refile the claim.
Wait, so how's she, okay, I know it's HIPAA. How's she doing? I mean, is she even going to allow people in the room?
She has to. I talked to her and I explained to her because of the situation now, she's going to have to be paying the care herself. And her policy premium is going to start again. She has an unlimited policy and she's anywhere close to dying. She's in her late 70s.
Oh, wow.
So we have to get this situation turned around, which means I need to educate my client. Yeah.
It's a tough one. That's a tough one. When you and I talked, we had dealing with parents, and I'm dealing with an elderly mom right now who is falling a lot, and she thinks she's got everybody fooled. She's got nobody fooled. It's really a problem. And so you and I talked a little bit, like as kids, we're trying to talk to her and it's conflict. She's not being upfront with us. We can't get through to her. We care about her. We love her. Can't get her on a cane, can't get her in a walker. Like, what do you do when you hit a situation like that?
So that's a great question. One of the areas on my test that I did poorly is client autonomy. And what that means is you basically let people do what they want and you butt out if they're not interested. And that goes against everything in me. So what I would say to you is you make sure that you have a power of attorney in place, you or your siblings, that somebody, not to say that you're using it at this point, but here's why you need to have a power of attorney. Because legally, you have to let her live the way she wants.
Yep.
The only time that you can truly step in and do something more drastic is if she's considered cognitively, mentally incompetent. And she may or she may not be, but you have to have a power of attorney. Those documents need to be put in place now so that if that time comes that you can start making decisions for her. So I completely understand what you're going through because I've got the same situation. And I have learned, because my pushing causes division.
Oh, no.
It causes more shutting down and less sharing. And so I know, and you know, the biggest concern is, well, there's going to be a fall, and then there's going to be a crisis, and then there's going to be this, and then it's going to be worse. And I would say to all that, that's true. However, you cannot force somebody, if they're in their sound mind, to do something that they don't want to do. but you can continue to encourage and love her and continue to develop that relationship with her where that trust equity grows. In my situation, the trust equity has been broken because I've been too pushy. And I'm trying to rebuild that again with my family member because they need me and they're not making good decisions. And I eventually will be the one to help them. But I want to be able to step in a loving way and truly mean it in my heart instead of like that.
And it's tough. It just to sit and wait for an incident and a crisis to happen before you get their attention. This is a really tough thing to deal with.
It is.
And my mom also has solutions. Like I try and talk to her about, hey, Mom, the eventuality, what do you want this to look like? Do you want to stay in your home? Do you want to go to a facility? And she's got this brilliant idea to have someone come and live in the home with her, give them free room and board, and they will take care of her. And this makes my skin crawl. I've heard on Facebook, there's attorneys who are looking for caregivers. And when the person is gone, or even not when they're gone, if they get hurt, they're not insured, they're not with an agency, or they weren't paid a fair wage. So these attorneys are trolling Facebook and they're looking for the caregivers and they're suing the estates and they're winning. And when my mom insists on this strategy, I want to lose my mind.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's a terrible idea to have a stranger live in with an elderly person. The only time that works is if there's a family member living in the house too that's with it and can oversee everything. But if that happens and your mom wants to do that, she absolutely has to hire them, and she has to have a company like Paychex or ADP. They have to be paying Social Security because legally in California, even though nobody pays attention to the law, if they are paid over a certain amount of money, then they're legally an employee, which means that if they work overtime, meaning if they're up all night or something like that, you're right. There's a legal issue there because that's employees' rights. And it sounds initially like this will be the cheapest way to go because I can give them room and board. They need help. I need help. It is a disaster because your mom's going to end up being the one on the losing end of the deal. In addition, we have situations where, unfortunately, these folks really, I don't want to say worm their way into the hearts of the individual. And I've had situations where these caregivers, there's these whole bands of people who do this. They come in, they start taking over documents. They just basically move in lock, stock, and barrel.
Yep, son or daughter they all wish they had, but didn't. Then here they are.
Yes. And so, anyway, I agree with you. It's very problematic. I do have an example of a family who did get a letter from an attorney. They wanted a little over $300,000.
What?
Yeah. In overtime pay. Because the caregiver was the only caregiver, overtime and holiday pay. And this person was beloved by the family. They were a good friend, right?
Wow.
What I tell people, I said, look, anytime somebody says, just pay me whatever you want, don't worry about that. We'll run.
And I agree with you. They have to be on payroll, Social Security, state disability, state unemployment. They need to be
worker comp. You got to have a workers'
comp.
Yeah.
Because like you, in the first example you gave, they both got hurt. And when a caregiver gets hurt, okay, so bad idea. Talk about these agencies. And I just went through this with my uncle who passed away in July. Oh my gosh, the agencies were expensive. We needed someone 4th of July weekend, and the cost per hour was, oh my gosh, and it was an 8-hour minimum. So agencies, talk to me about agencies.
So it's kind of swinging the conversation from one extreme necessarily to the other, because most people cannot afford to hire a typical agency for what they need. However, agencies right now are charging between $32 to $42 an hour, and that's for custodial care. That's not a registered nurse. A lot of people mistakenly think that you can, hire an agency and it's going to cost them $20 an hour. Not true.
Talk about what custodial care is.
Custodial care is bathing, assistance with bathing, dressing, shopping, going to the doctor's office. Very few of our clients are getting skilled care in their home with a nurse or physical therapist. And if they do, that will be paid for by Medicare.
Okay,
So
got it.
all of the other stuff, which is what people actually need to function in their home, is private pay. So there are over 400 home care agencies in San Diego, home care agencies. So we work with a handful, 5 or 6 different agencies we work with. And of course, we would prefer people use agencies because they're licensed, they're bonded. And if there is an incident, they're legally bound to deal with it, get law enforcement involved if that's necessary. I think the biggest gripe with clients is they say, well, I'm paying $35 an hour, but they're only paying my caregiver $15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. However, a lot of times the caregivers want to work for an agency because they have access to health benefits, they have access to insurance or holiday, and also they can stay busy. Okay. So right now, though, there is a horrific caregiver shortage. And so because of that, and because of COVID, if you want to have a home care agency, you're going to have a minimum of between 16 to 20 hours a week minimum. So you do the math, 20 hours a week times $35 an hour.
Crazy.
Yeah. Which is why people need long-term care insurance.
Yeah. So talk to me about long-term care, because after seeing this with my uncle and my mom, you've actually turned my thinking around on this, because I really didn't like it. All I saw was the train wrecks, but there's also that huge need. Mm-hmm. And the other concern that I have, if you could address, Linda, is I pay this insurance, it's expensive. And what if I don't need it? Mm-hmm. So talk to me about policies, like what's out there these days.
So you can purchase what's called either a traditional or a hybrid policy. Mm-hmm. A traditional policy is one that you and I are most familiar with. And what I have is you pay the premium annually. And just like you said, if you die, there's no refund. Now, you can get policies that have a return of premium. So you can add that on, but it's extra money. So to that dilemma, I would say this. I know that I'm going to spend probably $100,000 over the course of my life into my long-term care policy, minimum.
Wow.
If I die, I really don't care. I don't want to use my policy.
Yeah.
I don't want to use it. I don't care. And in fact, my kids, given the example in our families, are so thankful. My kids are so happy we have it. We talk about it all the time with them. They're so relieved. Not that they wouldn't help us out, but look, you've got kids that are in their 30s or whatever. Life is hard. So that's the last thing we want to do is put that on them. So I don't want to use it. I hope the insurance company gets all my money and I'm gone. Or if you don't like that, you can buy what's called a hybrid policy, which is a life insurance policy, and it has a long-term care rider. So for example,
interesting.
How it's illustrated often is it's a 3-bucket solution. You plunk in a certain amount of money, that's bucket 1. If you change your mind 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and you have a wealthy uncle that leaves you $5 million, you can cash it in and get your premium back with a little bit of interest. That's the second bucket. Or if you die, you have a death benefit, okay? Or if you need long-term care, the third bucket, so to speak, generally it gives you about 3 times the amount of what the death benefit is. So if your death benefit is $200,000, generally your long-term care benefit is between $500,000 to $600,000.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
So people like it. Now it's wonderful. And if you're thinking that's too good to be true, it's not, but it's expensive, right? And so who can buy something like that? Here's the person. If you are the type of individual who is a little concerned about long-term care, you know it's an issue, it's still on your mind, but you've got a CD or you've got money in savings for your quote-unquote long-term care fund, that money should be repositioned into one of these hybrid policies because
that makes sense.
It's so much better. That's the type of client that works for that. Other than that, most people are going to buy traditional long-term care insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've covered a lot, how to talk to parents, how to deal with these insurance policies. This has been really wonderful. I think, Linda, looking back kind of on some of the stories, if you had like any little pearl of wisdom, maybe for someone who's trying to deal with a long-term care, or maybe a child of a parent who's going through this. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm asking this. Yeah, what would be that one little pearl of wisdom?
I think the thing that I'm amazed by is the amount of non-communication that happens as people get older. That to me is one very sad, because when people are not talking to each other, lots of bad things can happen and things fall through the cracks. I find that a lot of times siblings and family dynamics, if they're not resolved and healthy, get more difficult as people age, of course. And so in some situations, for example, our clients will really lean on us and depend on us because they literally do not want to tell their families anything. And I have to honor that as their advocate. But I always, if I have an opportunity to talk to kids, I always tell them, while the time is now, I don't care what it takes. You say what you need to say and do it in a way that shows your parent. Hopefully it will be communicated with that you love them and you want to help them, and do little things for them so that, as I said, trust equity is built up. So when the time comes and they are afraid about a fall they just had or a diagnosis they just got, that they can talk to you. The other thing is, I think that people who have long-term care insurance do not know what they have.
Yeah.
And over time, they think, gosh, I've been paying in this for years and I'm 85. I'm dropping this thing. I'm 85. I haven't used it by now. And it's like, oh, don't do that. Oh, please don't do that. Because the average claim is between, of course, 85, 90 years old. That's the time at which the questions of, well, let's talk about how you're doing. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a gentleman call me. His mom has a CalPERS policy, and I don't know if you've heard what's going on with CalPERS, but that's a whole other topic.
The nightmare. It's a class action lawsuit. Exactly. It's a whole other topic.
It's a whole other topic. I did a webinar for them on Monday and for all of those policyholders. And the gentleman said, my mom just got this letter. She can get $60,000 back, and I think we're going to do it. And I said, okay, well, tell me, a little bit about your mom. She's great. She's wonderful. And I said, well, how old is she? She's 88. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about her health. Oh, she's fine. She's getting along fine. Okay, well, if you're going to cash the thing in, I suppose you could do that. But let me just ask a couple questions. When's the last time you saw her? Well, I don't get down often. She lives in one of these communities, senior communities. Okay. But I'm coming down to take her to the doctor to check her out because she's on oxygen. I'm like, what? Yeah. And so what I said to him was, I look at these things so differently. The way I'm going to talk to people about their long-term care insurance is I'm coming at it from, I want to know about your health. I want to know about how safe you are in your home. I want you to stay in your home and age with dignity and safely. So even though you think you're 20 years old and can rollerblade, you're on oxygen, you're dragging that thing around with you, which makes you frail, which makes you weak. We probably should talk. I don't think you should drop that policy just to get that 60,000. Now is the time you're probably going to use it. And by the way, generally when people file claims, their premiums end once they start getting benefits. So after I spoke with him, I think the light bulb went off and he realized I am not looking at this maybe the way you're looking at it. I'm looking at this as she's my mom and she's amazing. She's 88 and she's amazing. She's on oxygen, yet she's active and she's this. And I'm like, oh no,
dude.
No, that's not how you look at that. I'm glad you do though, because what a beautiful relationship and a wonderful son.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the truth.
Well, as I've been listening to you, I think my one takeaway from this call is the long-term care policy. Oh my gosh, do not lose that. Do not lose that, because there's, again, what pays, what doesn't pay, unless you've got that in writing.
Can I give you one more example really quick? I don't know how much time we have.
We're good.
Okay. So I took a call yesterday from a woman. As you know, most of these policies are having rate increases, and this particular company is Genworth, and they've been having a lot of rate increases. And so I looked at the woman's policy, and she's 79 years old. And I know that it would be nearly impossible to get her anything, but she's annoyed that her premium went up. So I said, let's do this. And her premium with the Genworth is about $7,000 a year, which is staggering. She's 79. The first thing I asked her is, can you afford this? And she said, I can afford it, but I'm super annoyed. Okay. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug these numbers into a policy today, and I'm going to tell you what you'd pay for this if we went to buy the same benefits, because she's got a very good policy. The premium was $33,000.
Oh, my Lord.
And she said, I don't believe that. And I printed it out and I sent it to her. And I said, I want you to look at this. I did apples to apples benefits with her policy. And she said, who would pay for something like that? And I said, you have this and you're unhappy paying $7,000. And she said, yeah, thank you. This makes sense. And I said, you're at a point in your life where the value of what you have for the problem is excellent. So it's all perspective. Yeah. And very rarely when I do policy reviews for people, very rarely does the end of the conversation go like this. Yeah, you probably should drop that.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Oh my gosh, Linda, you have been an absolute gem. We're going to post your website link here so people can call you, ask questions, run scenarios behind you, and by all means, get your help with that coordinated care because, wow, having just done that for my uncle, looking at it for my mom, this is such a complex arena, and to have someone who knows the playing field is just a gem. And so I can't thank you enough for being today on this podcast and sharing your wisdom and just being so generous with your heart. So thank you, Linda.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Advisory services are offered through Barbara J. Norman, LLC, an investment advisor in the states of California and Texas. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell, nor an offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of California, or where otherwise legally permitted. All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decisions. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to be complete analysis of the materials discussed. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of SagePath Solutions and are subject to change without notice.